Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I recommend highly don't have a double espresso just before you get up on stage. I've got, you get enough of that feeling of anxiety speaking to a vast number of people. So it's great to be here, and I think the first thing that comes to my mind is gratitude. Gratitude for this beautiful building, this fantastic city and country that we have, and gratitude for this wonderful institution of SickKids Hospital. We have a family history. Certainly my oldest brother, who's also my partner, had heart surgery here. We were living in Ottawa. He had heart surgery at SickKids many, many years ago when he was a youngster. And then having 5 children of my own, SickKids is the one place you don't want to ever go to, right? You don't want to bring your kids. But if you need to, there's no better place in the entire country than SickKids. And I think everybody here has clearly been touched by the incredible work they do. So I'm very humbled and very honored that I'm being given the opportunity to speak to you, because I think we all have a big responsibility and a great big opportunity to not just help SickKids Hospital, but to really help our clients and other charities that we might be passionate about in Canada. As a bit of a background, as Kevin said, I'm almost 30 years in professional practice, working with business owners and entrepreneurs, incorporated professionals and wealthy families. And we do 3 things. We do estate planning, so first, second, third opinions on estate planning for clients. We look at tax preservation strategies, so ways to keep taxes for families to preserve their estates. And the third area is philanthropy, which is really about converting taxes into charitable gifts. Now, I can tell you on Friday of this past week, I was giving a presentation to the board of directors for another large hospital in downtown Toronto, and there were about 20 members of the board of directors there. And I mean, it wasn't a paparazzi thing, but they were snapping pictures of my presentation. These were leaders of industry, and the foundation said, they've done many presentations before, but nobody's ever been taking pictures. So these are people who are really very well informed and well advised, but the ideas that we shared with them were things that were foreign to them. And I'm going to suggest that a lot of what I'm going to talk to you about today are things that are also foreign to your clients, and they could be foreign to you as well. So if you're packed with knowledge and wisdom that you can then use to help your clients and to help charities that we care about, then it's really a win-win-win. And it's really about collaborating. I think I'm very grateful to be able to share with you today what I do and how I help my clients and how I engage them in the philanthropic conversation. And hopefully you can use some of this material as well to help your clients and your community as well. So with that being said, let's get started. The world has changed a lot. 20 years ago we had Steve Jobs, Bob Hope, and Johnny Cash, and 20 years later, seems like there's no jobs, no hope, and no cash. But it's not all that bad. We have a new minority liberal government, and apparently they want to make amends with us, so they're going to be introducing a new one-page simplified tax return for this April that just has one question. It's going to make our lives much easier. How much money do you have? How much did you make? And send it to us. I joke around. Look, we're living in an incredibly highly taxed time, as we'll see. But here's some of the reality today and how it applies to SickKids and your clients and what we're doing. First of all, governments are not going to be capable of taking care of funding of nonprofits. It's just not possible. So as a result, they've introduced about 25 different pieces of legislation since 1995 to encourage Canadians to give to charities where there is a benefit. So I think it's very important that people realize that. Secondly, donations are down. In the last 20 years, there have been so many, donations are down, and I don't know about you, but we're all experiencing a little bit of donor fatigue. Last week I'm president of a nonprofit, so I was sort of reaching out to my friends and colleagues, and once I did, then they sent me a note, well, you're collecting for me, I'd like you to collect for this organization, and it seems like there's less money, or it's just harder to sort of divvy up the pot. The other issue is that we have donor risk. Imagine if you had a business and all of your business came from one client. You wouldn't be able to sleep at night worrying if that client ever left you. The reality is, for a lot of these nonprofits, they also have major donors that if those donors were not around, it could potentially be a big hit for an organization. I work with one group in the United States in Los Angeles where 2 of their major donors died within 18 months of each other. So the organization was waiting for the phone call from the lawyer to find out how much this donor had left in their will for the organization. And guess how much they left? 0. None. Why? Because nobody spoke to them about leaving a planned legacy gift. So there's a real big risk there. We're also in a misinformation age. People are going online to get all their information, but each person it's not a cookie cutter. Each situation is very unique. And we're also in a time right now, you've all heard of Freedom 55? So Freedom 55 today is when your youngest child is 55. Now you joke around, but I'm serious. Kids are getting out of school today, saddled with debt. Can they find jobs, let alone trying to find real estate in the GTA? I don't expect any of my children to be living in Toronto. And sure, we have to first take care of our families first. They say charity begins at home. We got to make sure the families are looked after. And the good news is, though, that people are seeking meaning. In particular, the millennials are very big on this. They're willing to spend more than retail if there is a social consciousness aspect to it. So that's really good news for us. And really, everyone in this room, we're the gatekeepers. I don't see 100 people. I see 10,000 people, because if you take 100 of you, you all know 100 people, and therefore you're really the sort of the center, the hub of the wheel for so many of these discussions. Now, this is something, I'm on the council of the CAGP, Canadian Association of Gift Planners, and they are actually going to be launching an initiative in 2020 for people to leave a gift in their will. That's it, just leave a gift in their will. This started out of the UK, and it was in place for 10 years. And before they started it, 4% of people in the UK had given a gift in their will, and by the end of the 10 years, it had grown to 9%. That growth from 4 to 9% represents $50 billion of charity. $50 billion. So this campaign is actually going to be involving all the nonprofits to pony up together. It's going to be a national campaign involving radio, television, online, offline, and it's actually going to be encouraging advisors through a pull strategy to talk to your clients, but also they're going to be distributing leads to individual advisors who are part of this program. So if you'd like more information, please contact Lori Fox. Her contact information is on the top right-hand side. But I think this is going to be very exciting for all of us, because it's all about raising awareness. And now, I may have started 28 years ago, but my real start in this business was actually in 1974, actually March the 8th. And that was the day that my father died of a heart attack at the age of 50. I was 11, I was the youngest of 4 boys, and my mother, who was 48 at the time, had to go back to work to support our family. The reason is my father was a busy engineer, there wasn't a will, there was very little savings, and there was no life insurance. So it was very hard for us. Fast forward, I work with some of the most successful clients in Canada, and you would think they'd have it all together. And I'm sure everybody here who's a professional advisor knows that that's not true. I would say just 80% of the people out there or more don't have things organized. They may have had a certain financial architecture they started with and furniture that fit that. Fast forward, their architecture is very different. The question is, does the furniture still fit? And my client, Moses Neimer, if anybody saw my TED Talk in June, he spoke, he got up, and he said, the shoemaker's son has no shoes. He was, putting up his hand to declare that. And I'd suggest that most people are in that situation. So we need to find the money. We need to find the opportunities for clients. It's not that they just call us and say, I'd like to give away a lot of money to charity. We have to help them to make this work. So what we do is we have a very holistic planning process. We look at things from 30,000 feet up, and we cover off all of these different items. And again, it's not a cookie cutter. Everybody's situation is different, but the idea here is to prioritize what's needed and move them along. But as you can see, the very last thing we talk about is charitable plan giving. Now, that's something we discuss with all of our clients, and I think it's incumbent on all of us to introduce that. This to me is one of the most important pieces, and that is in Canada, there's a lot of investing going on, but there's not a lot of planning. There's a big difference between investing and planning. So when it comes to most of our clients, they grow their wealth to a quite significant situation, and then they'll start accessing that money. And what I found that unless my clients were to invest all their money into a penny stock, or they were to start spending their money wildly every single day on a new Ferrari, chances are they're going to have more money when they die than what they have today. So while they're really holding on to money, which as the custodian or trustee for the next generation, that's their role, what they also don't realize is that they're partnering with Revenue Canada on that money. So when they see this situation, then we can show them ways to take some of that never spend money that they're only paying taxes on and use it to preserve their estates or to create some charitable good in the world. And the reason that we do that is because there are lots of taxes. I'm sure everybody in this room would have come across a situation where their clients don't realize how much taxes there are. You know, I sat with a widow who had a $2 million RIF, you know, and you know, she's feeling pretty good, or somebody who's sitting there with $10 million feeling pretty good, but when you do the math and realize their $10 million is only going to be $6 million to their family, that sort of gets their attention. Taxes in Ontario upon death are very high. So if you have registered assets, anything over $220,000, and you don't have a spouse to roll that over to, 54% of that is going to the government. Capital gains on any investment properties or shares or real estate or private equity are taxed at 27%. Corporate holdings could have a double taxation starting at 47% going up to 70%. Passive income inside corporations, you're sharing your investment returns with the government at over 50%, and then of course you have probate at 1.5%. So those numbers are quite significant when you realize what it can do in terms of encroaching on an estate. And here's why. People are stuck in Canada in something called the tax grind. Here's an example of somebody who invests $1 million at 4%, right? So this is a crude example at 4%, and they invest that for 25 years, so it just sits in an account at 4% and is compounded. If they had a 0% tax environment, their family would get about $2.5 million, but assuming their tax is at the highest rate, it ends up with $1.5 million, which means their cumulative loss due to tax is over $1 million. Notice, their loss is more than their original investment. People don't know about that. So if there's a way for us to take that money and actually shelter it from tax and be able to use it for charity or for preserving families' wealth, then it's incumbent upon us to do that. Now, my conversation with clients, I look at charitable giving in three ways. I look at it kind of like a sandwich. Part of the bread that is one part is really having an emotional discussion with clients. We have to engage them emotionally. The second part, the meat, that's really the technical strategies that we can actually introduce to help them with this planning. And then we finish it with an emotional event as well. So for every one of my clients and prospects, I explain that each one of us has three possible beneficiaries to our estate. You've got family, you've got the government, and you've got charity. And each of us can only pick two. Which two would you pick? Now, 9 times out of 10, probably close to 10 out of 10, they'll say, I'll take family and charity. Of course, there are a lot of socialists out there. We have a great country. We need roads and bridges and universities, but there's only so much tax that we want to spend. So we explain that with proper planning, you can be remembered for leaving a large check to charities you care about, as opposed to writing a big check to the tax department. Would that be of interest to you? Most people would say yes. So I'm just going to go very high level on just some gifting options, and I'm sure a lot of you know this already, but I have some strategies also I think that would be very interesting for you. We're going to talk about making bequests and wills. We'll talk about registered money. We'll talk about marketable securities, and we're going to end talking about life insurance and some other strategies along the way. So, let's just talk to your clients about leaving a bequest or a gift in a will. Either by leaving a fixed amount or a percentage to SickKids or to any of your charities. Realize that for every $2 you give to charity, it saves you $1 of tax, just sort of on a high level. So imagine if, everybody associated with SickKids, there was just a leave a gift in a will gear, and we said leave $25,000 in your will, which would not move the radar one little bit. But imagine you have 10,000 people doing that. You're creating hundreds of millions of dollars of money with something that's a very small unit. So it's something to consider. If you don't want to change your will, then just consider going to your financial institution and getting a multiple beneficiary form for your registered money and indicating a percentage or a dollar amount of your registered money that would go to charity. Why do I bring up RIFs and RSPs? Because in Canada, this is the largest this is the largest sort of tax time bomb that we have. And the government, in particular, discriminates against singles, divorcees, and widows in our country. Why is that? Because if you are a single, divorcee, or a widow, you don't have a spouse to roll all your assets to on a tax-free basis. Therefore, if there is a death, there's a disposition right away, and the government has their hand out and wants money. In the case of an RSP or a RIF, if a widow has a $2 million RIF, notice I always kill the guy. Well, that's just kind of the way that sort of it works. But the family would only receive $920,000. That's a big haircut. And people don't realize that. And most accountants will say, just take the minimum out of your RIF. So you're taking 5%, but you're making 8%, so you're continuing to accumulate a big tax deferral that's going to be happening there. So here's an idea. We have a 71-year-old widow with a $2 million RIF, and she's taking out after tax $48,000 a year. In this particular case, she really doesn't need the money, the net amount, because she has other pensions and other assets. So we said, let's take that $48,000 and why don't we use that to buy a $1.2 million life insurance policy. And we'll make half of it the beneficiary of charity and half will go to her heirs. So in this particular case, the charity gets $600,000, creates a charitable receipt for $600,000, which would save the estate about $300,000 of tax. Her beneficiaries, her kids, get another $600,000 plus the residue that's left in the RIF, plus the benefit of the tax receipt. So you've actually dialed up the amount that's going to the kids versus what she's doing right now, and you've created a significant gift for a charity. Again, it's just about moving the shells around. Marketable securities. Most people, I'm sure, in this room give money to charity, and most Canadians do it by virtue of a check, cash, or a credit card, correct? So to me, and I know Jamie spoke about this last year as well, it's probably the worst way to give money to charity. And unfortunately, a lot of the charities might speak about it, but maybe at the most 5% of their gifts are coming from marketable securities. Really, it's one of those things we have to go to our clients and say, listen, I know you give charity right now, don't cash the check. Anybody who's had money in the markets in the last 20 years, their money has gone up 4, 5, 6 times. Right? So they must have some ETFs or mutual funds or stocks. The government allows you to go ahead and donate, appreciated securities, no capital gains tax, and then you get a full tax receipt for that full market value. So in this case, somebody giving $50,000 in cash would have to make $100 before tax to have $50 to donate. Here, if they donate $50,000 in shares with a cost base of $10,000, they save $10,000, over $10,000 of capital gains taxes. They get a full receipt for the $50,000. And what I'd suggest is right now, in particular, this is like prime time. If you have any clients who are going to be paying taxes in April, this coming April, they should be doing this right now and setting up, if not something directly with SickKids or a charity of their choice, just even putting it into a donor-advised fund as a parking lot and now distributing the money after that. Yesterday afternoon, I was with some clients. They have a $36,000 of taxes that are going to be due in April, yet they've got about a $1.25 million non-registered securities portfolio. We said, why do that? Let's convert taxes into charity. And that's exactly what they did. They just were not aware of it. So I think it's something that's really incumbent on all of us to let our clients know. And then again, if you have corporate securities, you make a gift through a corporation, it's even better, because now you can actually get a deduction for that donation to charity, which reduces the tax value of the company when it comes to, let's say, making a sale of that business or for estate planning. And the beautiful part is any of the gains in that security that you've donated can actually come through the CDA, the capital dividend account, as a tax-free payout. So it's a nice way of getting money out of your company as well. Think now, if you have any clients that have sold a business, that's the year that somebody sells a business is the year that they can make their largest donation to charity and save a lot of taxes. So imagine going ahead, making a donation to a charity, having all that tax benefit, right? And then using that tax savings, perhaps, to buy some insurance inside their company to repatriate that money back to their family upon their death. So in other words, they made a great big donation, saved a lot of taxes, used the tax savings to buy insurance. Now what happens is their family is completely whole. It's just a timing issue until they get that money, right? So it's just a beautiful way to help your clients who are selling their businesses or have a very large disposition due to some sort of sale. We don't have a lot of tax shelters, I hate to use that word, but tax exempt strategies here in Canada. Other than your principal residence, whatever you buy it for and sell it for, you don't pay any taxes. And TFSAs are not taxed as well. And lottery winnings in Canada are not taxed as well for now. So don't buy your lottery tickets in the United States where they do tax you. But the last one, which not a lot of people know about, is tax-free life insurance. And we're going to go through a few of these right now. And I know I've heard, I think it was Keith Thompson, I think, who uses this analogy that if anybody's a golfer and you take a golf ball and you try to throw it as far as you can maybe send it out like 40 yards or something. But if you have one of those huge big Bertha clubs, right, you can shoot it out, 400 yards if you're really that great. That's what life insurance does in terms of maximizing a gift. We're going to talk about how it actually can be a very compelling strategy to help your clients to give optimize their gift to make it as large as possible at as little cost as possible. So here are the opportunities as far as gifting life insurance. One way is to donate an existing policy. So remember I talked about having financial architecture and furniture that you used to have that doesn't exist now? So we meet a lot of clients who have a policy that they bought when their kids were younger. They had a mortgage. It's a $250,000 policy, a $500,000, $1 million policy, and they might not need it anymore because it's not going to move the dial on their estate planning. Those clients can actually go ahead and get a fair market valuation done where they donate the policy to charity, so they get a very big tax savings. And going forward, the premiums they pay are considered charitable donations. So they can actually get a charitable receipt for that. Or the charity will find a donor to pay for the policy going forward, or the charity itself will pay for the premiums going forward. So SickKids has a portfolio of life insurance policies as an example. I have two that I'm working on right now with clients. One's a $1 million permanent level cost insurance policy. Another is a $1.1 million level cost permanent insurance policy. These clients no longer wanted those policies. They don't need them. And I said, why don't you donate them instead and get a charitable receipt? And they love that idea. So we're working on that right now. And as a result, it's a way for them to be recognized as giving a very big gift at a very little cost and actually creating a tax savings as well. Another idea is to donate a new policy. So if you have clients who have a tax bill, let's say of $500,000, why not get a $1 million life insurance policy and make the beneficiary of that a charity? In which case the charity would receive the $1 million on their death, which would create a charitable receipt for $1 million, which would save the estate the taxes that they had to pay, and they'd be remembered for giving $1 million to charity as opposed to writing a $500,000 check to the tax department. And that can be done with any situation. We have big estates where somebody has a $25 million tax bill. Wouldn't it be nicer to use pennies for dollars to leave $50 million to charity and be able to erase that tax bill using the power of life insurance? Another way is just tell your clients, I'm a big believer in tithing, so we talk about that to all of our suppliers and our clients. Your clients already have insurance in place. Why not just have them change the beneficiary of their existing insurance and make 10% of it go to SickKids? Very easy job to do. It's just some ink on paper and doesn't require a lot of work on their part. And SickKids, if they would like, will recognize them today for that gift, even though it's something that would be coming down the road. So those are just some of the ideas. And here's an example of the cost of donating a $1 million life insurance policy to charity. Now these are 10 pay, so these are permanent insurance policies where the individual would pay for 10 years and then not pay any longer. And these are on single life situations. So as you can see, a 30-year-old who wants to donate $1 million, and assuming that they're a male, their after-tax cost would be about $7,000 a year to make a $1 million donation to SickKids Hospital. And we've done that, and I'll explain that to you in a little bit. And as you can see, a 60-year-old after tax would be about $28,000 a year payable over 10 years. These are on single life, which means that if it was on a joint last to die basis, on a husband and wife, these rates would probably come down by about 25 to 40%. And if you just wanted to set it up on a universal life where it's a level cost, where you're paying forever, the cost would be even less than that. So it really is something that deserves some of our attention to see what we can do. And if I look in this room right now, we have 100 people. Just in terms of your own legacy, imagine if 100 of us did this, just in terms of our own planning and to help SickKids, we would create $100 million of gifting for SickKids Hospital for a very low cost. So it's definitely something to consider. And here's an example on the left-hand side. Let's just assume right now your clients are investing $100,000 a year after tax for 10 years, so they're putting away $1 million into a traditional investment, earning 5% and paying taxes on that. As you can see, at age 80, they'd have $1.36 million. At age 90, about almost $2 million for $1 million investment that they're currently doing. What we do is on the right-hand side, this is again a couple who's about 50 years of age. We're doing the same thing, but it's a little counterintuitive. We're saying, if I had $100,000 that I wanted to exempt from tax, I have to buy some of that tax-exempt insurance. In this case, you have to buy a policy of a $1.815 million policy to exempt that $100,000 fully from tax. So again, we're doing the same thing, 10 years, $1 million over 10 years. At age 80, there's almost $5 million. At age 90, over $7 million. So what we've done here is we've created $5 million more wealth for those clients by not doing anything, just doing a little bit of an addition to what they're currently doing. That's money that's available for inheritances, that's money that's available for charities, and if you look at the delta, from the left side to the right, somebody would have to invest $100,000 for 10 years to get that $7 million. They'd have to get about 12.3% of compounded return in order to do what the left side would do on the right side. Again, why is that? The insurance companies just have to earn half of that. It's the tax that we're really getting that's really encroaching on our wealth. So it's an important way of looking at your client's investment portfolio. Now, sort of saying, can we carve out a piece for tax-exempt cash value insurance to see if we can create more for the family or create something for charity? Now, here's a big secret, a huge secret. You likely have clients who have private foundations, or you likely have clients who have donor-advised funds. So they're using a community organization like Toronto, the Jewish Foundation, or the Toronto Foundation, or the Oakville Foundation. I would suggest that 99% of people who have foundations do not realize that you can own life insurance inside your own foundation. And it's shocking because the foundations themselves that actually support the people establishing these foundations are also not aware that this is something that can be done. So imagine, here's an example of a client that I have. They had a $1.5 million tax liability, and they had $8 million stock portfolio at a low cost base. The stocks actually used to be worth about $24 million, so they're not very happy, right? But what they wanted to do was do something good for charity and at the same time save taxes. So we set up a donor-advised fund where they donated $3 million of their low-cost shares to this donor-advised fund, which created a $3 million charitable receipt that offset 75% of their tax bill of $1.5 million. But then the money inside the donor-advised fund is professionally managed, and it actually gets a return. In this particular case, the return was over 10%. You know, they're not bad returns. The money is professionally managed, and if you have enough in your donor-advised fund, you can still retain your own investment advisors to do that. But what we did was we said, that $3 million at 10% produces $300,000 of interest on your charity. So we said, let's use $200,000 of just the interest. And what we did was we acquired a $9 million at $200,000, which now created a total amount of charity of $12 million for this family and converted $2.25 million of taxes into charity. So imagine if we are in those situations and your clients are there, you can actually show them ways to create much larger gifts for their family that they could distribute in perpetuity, or as just a flow-through out to the charities of their choice upon their death. For anybody who's in the investment business, one of the challenges we always face is you like your assets under management. We don't want to give up those assets under management. So here's a way to actually sort of have your cake and eat it too. It was a 70-year-old couple who had a $25 million portfolio, and they had a $5 million estate tax bill. That was something we couldn't erase. What we did was we acquired a $10 million joint last to die insurance policy with a premium of $500,000 a year payable for 10 years. So it was going to be $5 million. But what we did was we used leverage. So they went ahead and they established this policy, put the $500,000 into the policy, used the policy cash value and some additional collateral to borrow $500,000 and give it back to their investment advisor. Because you're borrowing to invest, you get to deduct the interest. So now they've got their money being invested, they've got this insurance policy, and all they're doing is servicing a loan. Upon their death, this policy would not stay at $10 million, actually grew, but upon their death, the principal that they borrowed gets paid back. The rest goes to a donor-advised fund that they've set up, which will produce a charitable receipt that will offset the estate taxes. So it's kind of like having your cake and eating it too. It's a nice little idea for somebody who's comfortable with leverage, is very happy with the returns they're making on their investment portfolio, and have the ability to deduct interest as well. Just a nice little idea. Other giving strategies, certainly we've talked about setting up either a private foundation, which again is not that expensive. It's a few $1,000s to set up, and then you have annual reporting and legals and accounting. But if you want your own little foundation, certainly if you've got sort of, let's say, $2 million plus of charity, you can set that up, or just piggyback one of the community foundations. And if you haven't spoken to the Toronto Foundation or the Jewish Foundation or the Oakville Foundation, I really feel it's important that we should all have meetings with that group and see what kind of neat stuff they've got. There are some really great opportunities for our clients if we just spend the time and get that information. Another area to look at is flow-through shares. A Pear Tree, Bear Tove, a Sprott. There are a number of different companies out there who really are offering opportunities for our clients who are already charitable to be able to give charity at the least cost possible. So these flow-throughs, when they're available, can bring down your cost to about 11 to 13 cents on the dollar. So they're a great way to maximize giving and to minimize the cost as well. So that's something, if there is, I know Robin Chirac from Pear Tree's here. It's a great thing to certainly look at for your clients, and I recommend that highly. Charitable insured annuities. You've heard of these before, and they're advertised, but to me, they are one of the smartest ways for charities to accumulate a lot of money and to help our clients. What does that look like? Let's say you went up to your client and you say, "Client, would you consider giving $100,000 to SickKids Hospital?" They might say, "Well, that's a lot of money. I can't do that." But if you turn to them and said, "How about donating $100,000 to SickKids, and we're going to give you a 6% return on your money for the rest of your life. For your wife, for you and your spouse, 6% forever." Is that something that might be of interest? Yeah, that might be of interest, right? Because it's now called an investment. The way that works is you would take, let's say, 60% of that $100,000 and you purchase an annuity that would provide that 6% return on that client's life and the spouse's life forever. The other $40,000 goes as a gift, and they get a charitable receipt for that $40,000, which is going to save them $20,000 of tax. So the combination of this, there's a bit of arbitrage there, and there are people certainly in the United States who are doing millions of dollars of these. And it's just a great way for charities to raise money and to help our clients. If you want to take it one step further, that $6,000 might not change the life of that couple when they're getting that. So you can say, hey, how about leveraging it some more? Let's use that $6,000 to buy a $350,000 life insurance policy with the $6,000, and now you just keep upping and upping and upping. So it's kind of, you're leveraging it all along the way, but each individual, of course, is different. Charitable remainder trust, certainly a great way to get a tax receipt today, have use of the income of your assets still, but upon your death, that asset goes to a charity. And then the last thing I want to talk to you about here in terms of on the insurance side is something called CPP philanthropy, or how do we finance our charitable aspirations using the government benefits. And this is a concept we created back in 2017. And the way it works is this. We all have clients, as a right of being in Canada, when they turn 65, they start receiving CPP. It works out to about $26,000 a year for a husband and wife. Most people don't need it. If you're well-to-do, you get it, you're taxed, you reinvest it, it's taxed, you reinvest it and it's taxed. So I said, how can we use that to create some really significant social good? So one way would be, you could take that $26,000 and a husband and wife could buy a $1.4 million life insurance policy with the proceeds from the CPP. If the policy is owned by a charity and the charity is the beneficiary, then the $26,000 is considered a charitable donation. So now your CPP is tax neutral, but you have a $1.4 million gift you've created. A second way is, take the CPP, pay taxes, get the $1.4 million policy, but let the beneficiary on death be a charity, which would create a $1.4 million gift, which would save your estate $700,000 of taxes. Or the third one, which I like the most, is take the CPP, get the $1.4 million, and make your children the beneficiary of that policy, and donate your registered money to charity, which would have been taxed at 54%. You basically dial up your children's inheritance by 50%, and you've nullified the taxes that are going to be due on your registered money, and you've created a lovely gift for charity. Again, it's just a nice way. Now, when I tell any of my clients about CPP philanthropy, they say, I want this. You know, yesterday I was with a fellow, he runs a very large investment fund, and we, instead of the charitable side, we said, look once you die, your CPP is over, right? So a lot of people wait till they're 70. I say, start taking it right away. You know, once you're gone, it doesn't exist. But wouldn't it be nice to actually provide your grandchildren with CPP for the rest of their lives? What do you mean? Just take that CPP, buy the policy, and make your grandchildren the beneficiary of that policy, in which case you can actually create an income for your grandchildren for the rest of their lives, utilizing your government benefits that you don't need. Just some ideas. In Canada, there are $7 billion of term life insurance policies that lapse or get canceled every year. $7 billion. Why? Because, as you know, term insurance is something that gets more expensive every 10 or 20 years, and eventually you don't need it anymore. It becomes cost prohibitive. So most people will cancel it. Or let's say they had a shareholders agreement and they sold the company. They no longer need that insurance. Well, there's a great opportunity here to be able to take those term insurance policies and, instead of canceling them, donating them to charity and getting a nice charitable receipt for anywhere between 10 to 50% of the face value, and being recognized by the charity for a great gift. And again, if you don't want to fund those policies going forward, SickKids will fund it, or a donor will fund it. We did a gift like this for Bishop's University recently, where they had a donor who had a $300,000 term life insurance policy. It's nothing. He wanted to donate it to the university. First, we converted the policy, and you can do that. There's no medical, so like an automatic conversion. This person had been diagnosed with Parkinson's 6 years earlier. So that policy was very valuable. He got a $175,000 charitable receipt for the market value for donating that to Bishop's University. That means it saved him $87,500 of tax, which he could use over a 5-year period of time. And then the university found another donor to pay for that policy. And they recognized the donor of this term policy, plus they recognized the guy who funded it. And it's a $300,000 gift. Those things don't just grow on trees. It's a nice way. So anybody that you come across, or any of your clients that have term insurance policies that they're going to cancel, just tell them there might be some gold in them their hills, right? And don't let that sort of fall off the table, because it's a great way to help our clients create a meaningful legacy. I noticed from my experience that there are 4 types of givers. There are some people who give, they want to be anonymous. Don't put my name on anything, otherwise I will no longer give you any money. And I'm sure you all know people like that. A second type of giver is somebody who does it because they want to set an example for others to give. And I think that's very altruistic. And the third type of person who gives, they want to do it because they want to be remembered. They want their name on a building, their name on a poster. They want their grandchildren to be able to say, look, you know, the hospital wing is named after us. The last people who like to do this or be philanthropic are the ones who know that it's really good for business. It's great for business to be philanthropic. Certainly, if you have a choice between doing business with one person who isn't philanthropic and one person who is, certainly we have a propensity to look towards that person. But let's just use an example with SickKids. My associate, Daniel Kashani at the back, had a client, a 27-year-old real estate developer who was really building up his practice. He still was not in the Peter Gilligan territory. But he wanted to be in that category. So what Daniel did was he arranged for this 27-year-old to acquire a $1 million life insurance policy, which he donated to SickKids Hospital. Of course, we got that big fake check, you know, the big, I'm sure you may have seen it, and he donated. His net cost per year for that policy is $6,500. It's costing him $6,500 a year for 10 years to be a $1 million giver. Now, it's great for him because now, besides being on the wall at SickKids, he's also now invited to all the events for the donors who are giving $100,000 plus per year. And he gets to walk around with a $6,500 donation and appears. So it's a great way of leveraging your marketing and your name for a very, very low cost. We're doing this right now with another individual where the premium is $330,000 a year. But I'll talk about how that works. And it's just an amazing way to actually help the charities, not just at death, but actually where the charities make some money while you're alive too. Here are just some case studies, and we'll wrap up with some questions. So I was introduced to a cardiologist who we did the planning and realized they had too much insurance. He's a cardiologist in his late 50s. By the way, he's still single, so if anybody's, you know, we're a full service agency. We try to take care of all of our clients' needs. Anyway, he had more insurance than he needed, and he said, let's cancel the policy. And I said, Jonathan, instead of canceling the policy, why don't we donate it to charity? You know, first of all, you can have a tax bill, and you're a charitable guy. So sure enough, that's what he did. He made the beneficiary of a South Lake Hospital Foundation, Mackenzie Health, the McGill Medical School, and a welfare fund. And South Lake Hospital wrote up a 2-page spread on him called The Cardiologist with Heart, right? And then the foundation that he got involved with recognized him in their Book of Life celebration, which recognized philanthropists in the community. So he went from, let's cancel this policy, to suddenly being a major philanthropist. So when I saw the article, I called him up, I said, Jonathan, it's a great article, but where's my name? I know it's because there's not a chance in France that this guy would have been doing any of that had I not had that conversation, had we not had that conversation with our clients. The Book of Life celebration, which was, I'm involved with the Jewish Foundation this year, they had 24 philanthropists which they recognized in June, and 6 of those were my clients. And I'm sure that none of them would have done any of those if really we'd not had that conversation. So, Socialite. This is a woman involved with a charity she's very passionate about, and she wanted to create a transformational gift. This is the $330,000 situation. So we acquired a $5 million life insurance policy that grows to $7.4 million lifetime for this particular person. The $330,000 she's giving is a charitable donation. So it's only costing her half of that over 10 years to create this $7.4 million gift. But one of the things that we're not always aware of is that there are these dividends that these participating whole life insurance policies shoot off every year. Most of the time we take those dividends and we use it to buy additional paid up additions because we want to keep it tax sheltered. But one of the options for dividends is to actually have the dividends paid out in a check every year. The problem with that is it would be taxable in your hands. But if the policy is owned by a charity, then the dividends that come out every year are going to the charity, so there's no tax. In her particular case, not only is she leaving a $7.4 million gift, but the dividends starting in year 11 started $125,000 a year and increase. So from age 53 onward, she's going to be giving anywhere between $125,000 and $200,000 every year just from the dividends in that policy. Amazing. So again, it's not only just not waiting until somebody dies, but actually getting a benefit from it while you're alive as well. And the young entrepreneur, we just made that explanation as well. So I mentioned about it, emotional, technical, and emotional. So here's the emotional at the end, and I'll ask everybody here, all of you, how many of you know the names of your grandparents? Show of hands. Everyone knows. How many people here know the names of their great-grandparents? Much fewer, right? So this is actually a picture of my great-grandparents, Liba and Aaron Gross, in 1934 in Poland before they were killed in the Holocaust. You can see the similarity between me and my grandmother, right? Imagine if on January the 1st, you received a check, an envelope, a letter in the mail, and inside there was a check for $10,000 from your great-grandfather. Do you think you'd remember their name? Yeah. So there's ways with our planning to be able to create these types of gifts where, from a legacy point of view, we actually can be remembered, not just for our kids, it's really our grandchildren. That's really the litmus test, what's going on with our grandchildren. And you've heard the expression, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. That's when the weather conditions are perfect. But if it's windy out there, the apple's far from the tree, and when you've got a tsunami, like we do today, the apple doesn't even know it came from a tree. So we see that either religion or charity in particular are ways to be able to give over those legacies and those values to our children and grandchildren so that they know this hard work that we worked through for many years is actually something that we know that we have a responsibility to give back. They say that you live once and you die twice. First time you live, of course, but the first time you die, sure, you stop breathing. But how is it that you die a second time? The second time is when people stop talking about you and your name stops being mentioned. And we think that that's a tragic way of not being remembered. So it really comes down to what type of legacy do you want to leave either yourselves personally in this room or your clients. It's very important that we engage this conversation with our clients because nobody else is. And just as far as next steps, I have something called the 72-hour rule, which is that if you found this of interest or an idea, do something about it within the next 72 hours. And if you don't, it's kind of we're on to the next things, our busy, busy lives, and we won't get to it. Certainly speak to the SickKids team, Kelly Trickett, who I want to thank all the SickKids people for the amazing work they do at organizing this as well. We've been writing for the Tax Letter, which is a subscription publication that's been around for decades, but we've been writing since 2011. We have 80 publications that we'd be happy to share with you that deal with a lot of these concepts on philanthropy. Happy to get that to you. We have these one-pagers as well that go through many of the conversations that we've had today to sort of just get your client's attention or to remind you of opportunities that you could do to help leave great gifts for SickKids. Consider your own legacy. Start there. It's great for business, great for your family. And I really believe in collaboration. People will say, Mark, why do you share all this sort of proprietary information to all your insurance, investment guys, bankers, or whatever? I was at a conference last week for Prime Quadrant. Kevin was there as well. And there was a speaker by the name of Steve Young. Steve Young was a quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, Hall of Famer. And his coach was Bill Walsh, thank you. Bill Walsh was the coach, and Bill Walsh actually kept a book of all of his strategies and all of his thinking. He kept a book, and he actually shared that book. And today, of the 30 teams, like 24 of them all use his technology. They said, why would you share all of that information? It's because, when you're given a gift, as we are, and I feel like I have a real gift as well, when you're given a gift, we have such an opportunity to make it better. I can either write a check myself or I can get other people to write checks, and it's so much more money. So really consider collaborating. If you have clients or if you have or organize companies that you think this message would be beneficial for, or you're involved with nonprofits that you think that this would be beneficial for, let's work together. But the one thing you can't do is you can't ignore it. There's just too much riding on the line. I'll just finish with one story, and then we'll call it a day. It's a true story about a guy named John Kluge. John Kluge was a multi-billionaire. He died a few years ago. He was the chair of a company called Metro Media. And at one point, he was the wealthiest person in America. He was asked what was the greatest accomplishment of his life. And he said the following story. He said that there was an 11-year-old boy in the United Kingdom who was dying of an inoperable brain tumor. And this boy had taken it upon himself to try to break the Guinness Book of World Records by receiving the most amount of get well cards. He actually collected 35 million, okay? And John Kluge saw this, and he sent a card to the family. He said, look, I'm a fairly wealthy guy. He said, I was involved by investing with a doctor in Pennsylvania in gamma knife treatment. It was something that and he said, I'd like to bring the boy there for a second opinion, and I will pay the freight as well. So the family took him up on it, and the boy was brought there, and they did all the diagnostics. And the doctor came out and he said, it's true. If we operate on this boy, likely he's not going to make it. And John Kluge said, if this was your son, and this was the only option you had, would you do the surgery with this new technology? and the doctor said he would. And the family agreed to have the surgery done, and the boy was operated on, and guess what? The boy lived, because if he died, this would be a terrible story. He lived. And for the rest of his life, this boy was so appreciative of this man who came through for him. But John Clouthier, the multi-billionaire, said that was the greatest accomplishment of his life. Not all of us are Warren Buffett or Bill Gates. We can't sort of engage in the gifting pledge like all of those people, but we have an ability with a few words and some paper and some ink to create tremendous legacies for our families and tremendous legacies for SickKids Hospital and other charities that we are very passionate about. So I encourage you all to take the next step and work on something for yourself and for your clients, and hopefully we'll all be very successful at raising a lot of money and helping this wonderful institution in our city. I want to thank you very much for listening. God bless and have a great day.